Okay, guys, it is time to talk about the kitchen. Hey there, my name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to mi casa. A little over a year ago, we began to build our home here in Tennessee. My husband is acting GC for the build, and I am in charge of all the design aspects, both interior and exterior. And this is our very first time doing this. We are finally closing in on the end of this build, and we are now working on the interior finishes of our home. In today's episode of our season 2 of Building a Farmhouse series, the interior finishes, we're going to talk about all things kitchen. And I am so excited to share with you all of the plans that I have for this space. This video is in collaboration with Home Outlet Stores. They are your home improvement space for kitchens, bathrooms, floors, doors, and more. Located across 20 states, from New York down to Florida and over to Texas. Also, don't forget to check out Seconds and Surplus if you're over in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That is their sister store. Now here are the plans for our kitchen. The highlighted area is our main kitchen space. It opens to the great room, and to the right of it is our dining room. Now behind this wall is what's labeled as the prep kitchen, but we're going to be referring to it as our butler's pantry. We won't have a sink, but we will have some appliances in the space. And finally, we have our pantry, which is actually prepped as a cold room, and we'll be using it as such once we get our vegetable garden started. But for the time being, we'll be using it as a regular pantry. Now, while the plans provide you with measurements and give you an idea of how you can lay out your kitchen space, the final design is ultimately up to me. And I did make some changes. For example, this plan calls for a 36-inch stove. However, I was going to be placing a 48-inch, so there had to be adjustments made. So here is my inspiration for this kitchen. I knew I wanted warm wood tones throughout the space. I was used to having white, bright kitchens in my previous homes. However, I wanted to bring warmer tones, something that only wood could bring. I also wanted to incorporate more traditional style and less modern. But in addition to having that traditional farmhouse feel in the kitchen, I also wanted to add cottage touches throughout to give it a little bit more charm. In addition to that, I knew I wanted dual-tone cabinets. I do like the richness of the wood, but I also wanted to break it up with some lighter pieces, especially on the upper part of the kitchen. I also plan on adding some custom and unique pieces to the space. So with all of that in mind, I put together my mood board with everything that I wanted to see in this space. So I put everything together and took all of that information to Home Outlet so I can start designing. I gave them my plans with my measurements as well as the layout, and then we began putting the kitchen together based on the needs that I needed for the space as well as the design that I was envisioning. Now, if you have been thinking of designing your own kitchen or remodeling the one that you currently have, you can take your floor plan as well as your wish list to Home Outlet, and there they can help you design the kitchen with all of your needs in mind. You can see your kitchen come to life in real time through a 3D model that they generate right there in the store. And once you're happy with the design, they can provide you a detailed itemized list with everything that you need in order to bring your design to life. And the best part about this service is that it's absolutely free. And I will say I was there quite a bit before I finalized the final design of the kitchen. They saw me way too many times, but it was one of those things where I had to make sure that everything was just right. So here is the 3D rendering of the kitchen that they generated right there at the store. On the right, you have the main kitchen area, and to the left, you have the butler's pantry. The butler's pantry is more of a hallway, but this will give you an idea of what the cabinets are going to look like in the space. As you can see, the bottom cabinets are going to be wood, and the top ones will be white. However, for the butler's pantry, I decided to flip it and do the white cabinets on the bottom. And then we can incorporate built-ins that are wood tone on the top. So it'll be flipped and it'll have its own little personality, even though it still ties in with the rest of the kitchen. So this is the mood board that I have for the pantry area, and this is what I have in mind. So as you can see, the left is my inspiration, and I might have open shelving for a while until we can actually finish the entire built-in. I also plan on adding a new color for the walls, which is called Soft Sage by Sherwin-Williams. I love this color. I actually have it in other places in our house, which you will see as well, but I just think that this would be a nice little accent to have in this space. The cabinets in this space will house larger appliances like crock pots and pressure cookers that I don't use as often. It will have a deep freezer where we keep our whole or half cow depending on the season, and we will also have a beverage fridge in this area. Our beverage fridge is going to help us, especially since we have a countertop fridge in our main kitchen area. You don't get as much cubic feet for the interior of your fridge if you have a counter depth, so having a beverage fridge solely for beverages will help us with the square footage that we have left over in our main fridge. So my final selections was maple ash for the lower cabinets and then a bright white for the upper. And now, one of the most important things that I wanted in my kitchen, no exceptions, was a larger stove. Not your regular standard range size. I wanted something much wider. I wanted a 48-inch stove because I wanted to have more burners. I absolutely enjoy cooking food. And one of the things that I would love to do more once the house is, finished is to actually host more in my home. That's something that brings me a lot of joy. And for that, I want to be able to cook lots of food and lots of different meals. So I thought I need a bigger stove and I needed to have 2 ovens. Also, that was going to be great for me for when I start doing more recipes on my channel. I'd love to have the chance to work on a, more commercial grade stove. So that was one thing that I really needed. I also wanted to make sure I had a pot filler because I didn't have one in any of my previous homes. I've never had one. I think they're beautiful, and I really do think it'll help as far as function to just go ahead and fill my pots above the stove. Of course, I had to also have a farmhouse sink. Ever since I got my first farmhouse sink, I have not turned back. I really enjoy doing dishes in a large single basin farmhouse sink. So that was another thing that I really had to have. Another thing that I thought would be really nice to have in this kitchen to just really anchor it and give it a focal point would be a nice large, custom hood vent piece that would just stand out against everything. So those were the things that I was kind of looking for. How can I make this really a special kitchen? And those were the 4 must haves. Everything else just kind of fell into place afterwards. For the face of the cabinets, I wanted something a little bit fancy. I didn't want just the plain shaker style doors. I wanted something with an additional trim and detail on the front of it. So this is what the face of the cabinets look like. And it's going to be both the same for the upper cabinets as well as the lower cabinets. Now, when the kitchen design was finalized, I took the final measurement renderings from Home Outlet and I decided to overlay them in the areas where they would go so I would get a better idea of what they would look like in the space. This is the main wall you will see when you come into the kitchen and where the stove is going to go. And then this is the other main wall in the kitchen, and this is where the rest of the cabinetry as well as the refrigerator is going to go. And while all of that cabinetry is super exciting, I did want to show you how the butler's pantry is laid out, how wide it is, and what it looks like in comparison to the rest of the kitchen. So as you can see, it's its own little space right behind the main kitchen. Now, the butler's pantry is not going to get finished right away. This is something that Nelson and I are going to take on after we move in, and we're going to customize it once we're in and kind of see how we're going to use that space. And that's something that him and I are going to DIY together. Now the day finally came for us to pick up our kitchen cabinets, and we ended up renting a U-Haul for this. As you can see, we had a ton of boxes to pick up. Not only were we picking up our kitchen cabinets, but we were also picking up our bathroom cabinets as well as some flooring. And as you can see, we were so excited to be here. However, it wouldn't be a normal workday for us if something chaotic didn't happen. And of course, we had to have a hailstorm just come on in exactly at the moment when we were trying to load the truck. The good news is that it finally let up and we were able to finish loading and be on our way. Back home, we had to go through all of the boxes and determine what boxes went to the kitchen as well as the different bathrooms, and we had to kind of separate everything, label everything, and just get it all organized. Then we began bringing all of the boxes in and then opening up all of the cabinetry and making sure that everything arrived okay. Then we placed them in the dining room area so that we had easy access to them when it was time to install them. However, before we installed them, we decided to go ahead and paint the walls. We were focused on the areas that were going to be exposed after the cabinets were installed. Now the color that we're using is on the screen, and this is a color that we're going to be using throughout the main floor. This is going to be in the dining area, the living area, the kitchen, as well as some hallways and stairs. I did also want to say that we've never had a scaffold before, and this is the first time we've actually owned one, and it has been a blessing, especially since we have such tall ceilings. They're all 10 foot tall on the first floor, and it's been just such a great help when painting the walls. Next, it was time to install the cabinetry, and we began with the wall where the stove is going to be. Now, we placed the bottom cabinets where they go and made sure that they measured up exactly with the size of what the stove is going to be. We marked the walls and got a good idea of where they needed to be because we needed to align them with the top cabinets. However, the top cabinets were installed first so that there was adequate space to get around and underneath them in order to install them properly. We are taking all of these cabinets all the way up to our ceilings. So there's going to be two sets of cabinetry, one on top of the other as you see here, along with the crown molding at the very top. Now these top cabinets that you see without a full panel, they are done that way specifically because we will be putting glass panels in them down the road. Installation was pretty simple. We followed the plans given to us by Home Outlet when we placed the order. That way we knew exactly where everything went, including any spacers that were necessary to add on to the footprint. Something else that helped us during the install was we added additional bracing in the walls for the cabinets. And something else that was really helpful was we took pictures of all of the walls before there was any drywall in it. So for example, this wall has copper piping, it has electrical wires for all of the outlets and the lighting that's going to go on these cabinets. It also has a gas line for the stove. There's just a lot of things like that. So we made sure that we took pictures, and what we did is we labeled which wall it was, and what we did is we took measurements and we were able to find anything back here, whether it's some plumbing or some electrical that's important or additional bracing that's in the wall. We marked how far off the edges they were and how up high off the ground they were. So when we have all the drywall up and we need to attach something to the wall, we know exactly where it is, and it's making the whole process a lot easier. I kept those pictures along with the cabinet plans in my home binder. This way I had all that information handy and accessible at all times. Next, we began the installation of the cabinetry on the other wall of the kitchen. We weren't able to add all of them simply because some of the cabinetry has to go on top of countertops and we have to wait for those to come in. Also, we needed to wait for the hood vent to be installed in order to install the rest of the cabinets. Nelson also arranged for the appliances to come around this time. So back to the cabinets. Once we got all the wall cabinets that we could install, then it was time to figure out the layout of the island. Now we knew how the cabinets were to be arranged, but we wanted to make sure we knew exactly where they were positioned on the floor because we had to cut the holes out in order to put the piping through for the water and any electrical work that was run through the slab. Right about this time, our hood vent cover came in and it was massive. You have an idea of what things are going to look like, and then when you actually see them in person, they just blow you away. Now, this was done by a local carpenter that we have hired in the past, and I have given him some ideas and some pictures for inspiration of what I wanted to go in this space. We have previously gone over the details, exactly how big and how high we wanted it to go up. And I also asked him to try and color match this hood vent to the cabinetry that went on the bottom, and I think he got it quite close actually. Before the hood vent went up, Nelson did his electrical work and made sure that the outlet for where the hood vent was actually going to plug in was in the right spot. He wanted to make sure that it wasn't interfering with anything on the back side of the hood vent cover. So he got that taken care of, and then it was time to install the cover. This is one of those moments where you get a little bit nervous, hoping, that everything goes okay during the install, and good thing everything did. Once the hood vent cover was up, it was time to install the following cabinets on the other side of it, and then we were done with this back wall. Next, it was time to install the corbels underneath the hood vent cover. This came after all the upper cabinets were installed. I was very happy with how the hood vent cover turned out, as well as these corbels. When I had this in my mind, I envisioned something large and handcrafted like this, something that would stand the test of time, look traditional, but also very unique in this space. Now, you may notice behind me that there are no outlets on these walls. That's something that Nelson and I decided on. He's actually going to be putting strips underneath the cabinetry right here. There is an extra lip that goes down further from the cabinet, and there is a cavity up here that he's going to put outlet strips in so that I can plug in my appliances underneath the cabinet, and then when I'm done with them I can just take it down and you'll have a nice clean backsplash with no outlets in the walls, just the actual backsplash. So that was something else that we kind of came up with as far as design is concerned. Now let's talk countertops. Now I love quartz, and we had it in our last house on our big kitchen island that Nelson and I built from scratch. After having that, I knew I wanted it in this kitchen, and I chose Calicut Arlo for this. It's a brand new quartz design, and I'm very excited about it because it's low maintenance and yet it just looks absolutely stunning. And I can't wait to show you once it gets installed. Now, as of right now, our kitchen isn't completely installed. There's still a couple of things that we have to adjust, and there was kind of a mistake that was made when it came to the island. However, I do believe there is a solution for everything, and we are going to figure it out, my friends. So that's coming in the next episode for the kitchen. So if you want to know what that is, make sure you hit subscribe. That way you can stick around and know exactly what I'm talking about in the next kitchen episode. All right, everyone, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below which part of the kitchen is your favorite so far. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you to Home Outlet for sponsoring today's video. I have more episodes coming your way of our interior finishes of our farmhouse. I will see you all very soon. Until then, adios.